Thank you. So I'm Matt. I am the husband of Bex, who spoke a couple of weeks ago, I think. Yeah, so you got the good one at the start, and then you get the one that comes afterwards. She's a good speaker. But today, it's supposed to be Pentecost Sunday, and I saw on the church chat that Susie was unwell, and so I reached out to Nui and said, look, I've got some sermons up my sleeve if you want, some messages up my sleeve if you want someone to talk. And so at about, I don't know when that was, about 1 o'clock, I just gone out for lunch for someone from the recovery church this morning that I was at, and taking them out for lunch and dropped them off at home, and driving back home, was about to go for a nap, because I get quite tired after I'm an extrovert, but after I do things like that, I get actually quite tired. It's quite funny, actually, coming from an extrovert. But yeah, so I actually spoke this morning on the second part to this, and it was called Like a Fish Standing on the Beach. So if I do well, you might get the second part later on. But this one is just called The Stranger. And so I want to look at a passage that at its core is about hospitality. I don't know if I've actually heard it preached before, apart from coming out of my mouth in my time of sitting where you are and trying to listen to someone speaking for a while. But we often don't see the core point of this, just because it's an absolute crazy story. Like, there's a lot going in on it, and so we miss the underlying issue. And the story that we're going to look at is Genesis 19. Who knows what the story is in Genesis 19? Anyone? Genesis 19. It's about two towns, Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, if you have heard it, you probably heard it preached about a certain thing, and I'm not gonna go anywhere near that thing. And so this is not just a random story, and I wanted to break this down for it because it has its place. It has its place in the Old Testament, but it also has its place in the New Testament, and it has its place for us today. And so it talks directly on how we interact with each other. We've got so many issues going on in the world today, in our society today. In Auckland alone, how many shootings have we had in the past couple of months? Too many. And yet the narrative is around putting police on every corner, arm the police, do this. But we're not getting to the core issue. It's how we interact with each other, how we interact with society, how we interact with this world. And so we have this story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and you're probably thinking, how has this got anything to do with how we interact with each other? But we'll get there. And I'm going to say this from the start, that we are not going to have, I'm not going to answer every question that you have within this story, because there's a whole lot in here. There's a lot of questions that you will come away after this message, today, which is a good thing, because we should have questions, and we should be searching for those questions, those answers. And it's good that that sometimes we don't have an answer. Do you know that when in the olden days, when a disciple was going through school, and so right from a young age, a guy would learn the Torah, a boy would learn the Torah, and then he will have a kind of like a test. And then if he passes that test, he'll learn the poems and the poetry, all that kind of stuff, the letters, the rest of the Old Testament. And then he'll have a test. And that test will be to see if he becomes a disciple of that rabbi and train under that rabbi. Do you know what that test is? It's not answering what the rabbi asks you like it is in school. It's actually the way you question. So I would be judged on what I am asking. How deep are the questions I am asking? Not whether I know the answers or not. It's how deep the questioning is that I question the rabbi, which is kind of backwards to what we have in our school system, where we always have to try and find the answer. So we don't need the answer. It's about the questions. How are we questioning? How deep are we going with our questions? And so we're not going to have all the answers after today, but that's all right. So the setup to the story is we have two neighbouring towns. This is where the whiteboard comes in. I never really like to sit and listen to someone talk for like 20 to 40 minutes. I'm like, oh, a bird. Oh, what's this? Just wasn't me. So I apologise for those that are like this, because I kind of teach like I don't like. But we have these two neighbouring towns. Well, one with S, and we'll go down here with Gomorrah. All right. So Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, these neighbouring towns are wicked. The texts say that they are wicked. And so this guy called Abraham tries to intercede for these towns. And we know, because of how he's interceding, that there is one righteous man. And this guy is named Lot. Now, you have these two travellers who, depending on your translation, are either men, angels, messengers. But again, we're not going to get hung up on that kind of stuff. Okay? The word the Bible uses here is malach, M-A-L-A-K, which means angel or messenger. Okay, so whether they're men, messengers, angels, whatever. So these two malach, these two messengers walk into the city, basically to see to its destruction. So that's about to happen. These two guys walk into the town to destroy it. So Genesis 19, chapter 19, verse 1. I wonder, I didn't ask if you could put that up, if you can do that. I don't know if you can on that thing. Genesis chapter 19, verse 1. That evening, two men came into the entrance of the city of Sodom. Lot was sitting there, and when he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Then he welcomed them and bowed with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, come to my home to wash your feet and be my guests for the night. You may then get up early in the morning and be on your way again. So this section here implies that Lot didn't know these gentlemen. Lot had no idea who they were. He wasn't expecting them. So what was he doing sitting at the gate? And, at the gate where they came, and later we'll talk on while he was there. But he is there, and these random two men show up, and his first impulse is to invite them into his house for the night, which seems very risky. They replied, oh no, we'll just spend the night out here in the city square. But Lot insisted, so at last they went home with him. Lot prepared a feast for them, complete with fresh bread, made without yeast, and they ate. So we have Lot sitting at the gate, because for some reason, and he invites them in. They say, no, we will just sleep in the square. Lot says, no, this is a bad idea. This is not good. And so he insists that they come back to his house. So they are in a home, and verse 4 is where it takes a very, very dark turn, which I'm glad the kids aren't here, actually, and it gets quite dodgy. Oh, there's one little one here. I apologise, Mum. But before they retired for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted to Lot, where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out so we can torture and rape them and murder them. Okay, so I'm just going to say that the way this has been translated really downplays what has been said here. It could imply a consensual interaction, but by no means that is right. If you take this and put it in literal contextual translation, where it says that the actual translation, can we have verse 5 up? Is that verse 5? Can we have verse 5 up? See what it says on this translation. Here you go. Bring them out so we can have sex with them. That is the translation that we have in our Bibles. If you translate it to the original language that was meant, it uses a word that talks about torture, talks about murder, and talks about rape. So it's a lot bigger issue going on here. This isn't just, hey, we're having a party and we want you to join us. This is a, hey, we heard there was outsiders here in this town. We don't know who they are, but our first response to outsiders is we're going to murder them, we're going to torture them, we're going to rape them. Now you wonder why God said this place was wicked. That's their first response. So in verse 6, Lot stepped outside to talk to them, shutting the door behind him. Please, my brothers, he begged, don't do such a wicked thing. Look, there's so much in this that you want to break down and question, why is Lot called a righteous man? And we'll get to that. But he says this, I have 2 virgin daughters, let me bring them out to you, and you can do with them as you wish. Oh my goodness. This is insane, and it should bother us. And I wish we had more time to get into this. Now, another thing I have an issue here is that we have been told this passage in been told before, this passage in chapter 18, that Lot is the most righteous man in Sodom. So if he's the most righteous one, then how wicked is everyone else? So you can see how messed up this town is. And I could do a whole sermon on the value of women in this society, in this culture. But it's bigger than just that. He goes on, but please leave these men alone, for they are my guests and they are under my protection. Stand back, they all shouted. This fellow came to town as an outsider and now he's acting like our judge. We'll treat you far worse than those other men. So they're telling Lot that he's an outsider. So here they are talking about Lot right in front of him. So going back to chapter 13, Lot has moved from another town. He is not a native-born citizen of Sodom, and clearly the people of Sodom have a hard time with new faces. So why has Lot been able to live here with so much peace so far? These people have let him in because we know that Lot is very, very rich. He has a lot of wealth, and chapter 13 in Genesis talks about that. So these people have let him in because he is rich, and he will be beneficial to boosting their economy. But we will still call him a foreigner, and we will still keep an eye on him. He's not really one of us. He's an outsider. We'll just use him for what he's got. So their hospitality with him only goes so far, because right now there is hostility being aimed at him. So let's carry on. And they lunged toward Lot to break down the door, but the 2 angels reached out, pulled Lot into the house, and bolted the door. Then they blinded all the men, young and old, who were at the door of the house. So they gave up trying to get inside. Meanwhile, the angels, the messengers, the men, questioned Lot, do you have any other relatives here in the city? They asked, get them out of this place, your sons-in-laws, sons, daughters, or anyone else, for we are about to destroy this city completely. The outcry against this place is so great, it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it. So, the story continues with more urgency and warnings until the city is destroyed, and the only people that are alive are Lot and his daughters. So we have these 2 places, these 2 towns. So what's really going on here, and why is it so bad? We've already seen why in the story and not in the way a lot of people want to hear or talk about. So the ancient Near East hospitality was seen as this great virtue. Abraham and Lot were seen as righteous men. And this is the reason why, is the idea of welcoming someone into your community is seen as a virtue. And in fact, earlier we see Abraham, and what the writer has been trying to do is tell us what a great righteous man Abraham was. And in chapter 18, we see Abraham being hospitable to men that stayed with Lot, the same men. And so the writer is telling us that, yes, Lot is doing the same thing. So Abraham, Lot, righteousness, and hospitality all go in one. So whenever you hear about a man being righteous in this day and age, around this time, it is because they are hospitable. So when the writer tells us that Lot also welcomed in, the writer is stating that Lot is righteous. And so throughout the Near East, hospitality is this highly valuable virtue. And if you wanted to explain to people how good someone is, you would tell them stories about how hospitable they are. You with me here? Yeah? Got all the background here. We're getting all the background, all the cultural background here to understand the story. So we had groups of people who were collected and assembled in a structural societal kind of way. And we call it in New Zealand, Aotearoa, iwis or tribes. So you have these two tribes, Sodom and Gomorrah. You have other ones around the place. You have all these other ones. So let's say Auckland, Hamilton. Oh, we don't want to go there. I lived there for 6 years. Right. We've got Wellington. We've got Whangarei. Okay, we've got all these places in Sodom and Gomorrah and all of them. Okay, and so you have these communities. So there are a certain amount of safety in these communities because there are guidelines. So when traveling between these communities, there is absolutely anarchy. So in this space, anarchy, that looks right. Might not be right, but there's anarchy in the desert area. And so you're vulnerable because there is no guidelines or laws between the towns to protect you. All the laws were based around your tribe, was based around your community. So there was a certain amount of safety. Also in this time you had nomads. Now this was not by choice. So because there's anarchy between the communities, there are reasons why there are people traveling between towns. And the reasons why you would be like that is if you were survivors of a war. You were extremely vulnerable because there are no laws between the areas. You didn't have people that moved between them for no reason. So if someone does move in, then they are in a very dangerous situation moving between these societies. And so because of all this history, context, and culture, when you wanted to tell someone's... Oh, actually, I've said that, haven't I? Anyway, so between here... So the reason why someone would travel between Auckland and Whangarei was because maybe Wellington came up and conquered Auckland and took over Auckland, and then you had no place to live. Okay? So you had to move out of Auckland and travel to Whangarei. There's no other way. Or you were in Auckland or in Hamilton and you were kicked out for doing something really, really badly, for breaking society's laws, and you had to travel between another place. So can you see why Lot was sitting at the gate? Now, Lot was waiting for any travellers. He knew that if somebody visits, there's going to be trouble. He had no idea that these two guys were coming. And so if someone visits and anyone else is there before him, in this society, in this one and this one, the rules are they're fair game unless they can benefit me. So this is why Lot was sitting at the gate. He needs to be there before anyone else sees them. Lot's response to this society is that I have to be the first person that they see when entering in this town, otherwise they won't make it out of Sodom alive. Lot is not there because he wants to sit out by the gate. He is there because he knows it's a matter of life and death in this society. This is why he states, but please leave these men alone, for they are guests and they are under my protection. So there's obviously a law around guests and protection in Sodom. Because this is why he says about his daughters, if you invite someone into your home in those days, if I invite someone into my home, I am responsible for that person and their well-being more than I am of my own family. That's a strange rule, but that's what the rule was in Sodom. I am responsible for my guests more than I am my own family, which is why you see Lot say, here are my daughters. That's probably not the only reason. There's probably more stuff going on in there, as I said. So I am responsible to guests, their person and their well-being more than I am my own family. This idea of being hospitable is all over the Old Testament. And when God teaches his people to be set apart, he says this in Leviticus 19:33, do not take advantage of foreigners who live among you in your land. Treat them like native-born Israelites and love them as you love themselves. Remember that you were once foreigners living in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Now, with all this context, you can understand why God said this. We're like sitting there going, well, of course I'll love them. Yeah, of course I'll be nice to them. But in this culture, in what's going on in this world, there's a rule here that says a guideline that says do not take advantage of foreigners who live among you in your land. That Leviticus 19, we see sometimes Leviticus and all these rules and you're like, oh, that don't make sense. God's like, don't treat people this way. This is not what I want from my people. Over and over again, Scripture, you find what is often referred to as the vulnerability triad. It is the foreigner, anyone else know the next one? The widow and the orphan. The foreigner, the widow, and the orphan. So if you ever find language about caring, about looking after someone, about their well-being in the Bible, they are referring to this triad of three. Now, why do you think they are so vulnerable? Because of what's going on. The widow, someone must have died. Their carer, the man of the house would have passed away. Who's to look after them? There's no one there. Rules state they're fair game. The foreigner. Why would a foreigner leave his own place, her own place? The orphan, again, the person who's supposed to be looking after them is gone, so they're fair game. And so to mistreat them is a crime. To mistreat them is not only a crime to humanity, but it's also a crime to God. This is how you should show the world you are a righteous person. And this is how the writer is trying to show us how Lot is righteous. This is how the writer is trying to teach us this, because he is the only one in that city interested in the stranger, in the foreigner, in the widow, in the orphan. So apparently Sodom had a bad reputation in this regard. And there are lots of literature outside of the Bible that talk about Sodom in this light, which will take a long time to talk about them. So even in the Bible, Ezekiel states in Ezekiel 49, I don't know if that's verse 49 or chapter 49, I'm not sure. Sodom's sins were pride, gluttony, laziness, while the poor and needy suffered outside her door. So this takes it past the stranger, the outsider who wanted to come in. It was who the outsider who wanted to come in was suffering. And how are we going to treat those people? So the writer is stating that the people of Sodom became so singularly focused on their own issues that they didn't just become indifferent with others, they became very hostile to the point of murder, torture, and rape. It was so bad in the city that the ancient Jewish literature, there is a story of a lady from Sodom who used to help the poor in secret. And when the town found out, they had her burned alive. It was this bad that when it really came down to it, would anyone really miss this society? This isn't a cautionary tale, like watch out just in case you got wiped from existence. This is a story that highlights virtues of charity and hospitality. The writer wants us to question how we are treating people that are not like ourselves. I don't think of it as watch out because this may happen to you, as I heard it preached. Think of it as what can I do to show goodness to the valuable. Don't take it as a, oh, you better do this or something will happen to you. No. Let's flip the script. And Jesus affirms this a lot later. We need to look at this on how do I show goodness to the vulnerable, because our God cares about how we treat people. And so Jesus affirms this in Matthew 25, and we know what Matthew 25 is, right? The sheep and the goats, how we treat people. Jesus is saying that whenever we come to the aid of the stranger, of the sick, of the hungry, of the needy, of the vulnerable, there is a divine presence in that. Jesus is saying, I am here with you when you do that. I am with you. Which raises the question for all of us, for all of this, what does it look like for us to live with a spirit of hospitality? What does it look like for us to posture ourselves towards the needs of others? You know what type of tribe you belong to. You know what type of society you belong to. You know what type of community you belong to. We can sit here and we can say, oh, the police need to sit at every single corner with guns, or we need to get harder and in the law and crack the whip and all that kind of stuff. Why don't we start by catching them before they fall off that cliff? Because places like this are here for the sick. They're not here for people who are well, for us to start our own little club. Sorry. Are there people that you need to see? Do you need to sit outside the gate of your tribe, of your society, and wait? Are there people that you pass by or meet every single day, and that because you're busy, that there is so much going on, and even though you interact every day, that if you just scratch the surface a little bit, they are just hanging by a thread? Is it possible that there is some amount of grace, warmth, or hospitality that could give these people just enough to get through another day? Is it possible that we need to truly, truly see people for who they are? You know, the biggest problem that we have in this world is fear. I fear you because you're from another country. I don't understand you, so I'm going to fear you, so I'm going to do something about it. I fear you because you're a different religion to me. I don't understand that. It doesn't compute in my mind, and so I don't understand, so I fear you because of it. I don't understand you because you're a different color. Your culture's different, and so I don't understand you, so I fear you. Fear is at the root of the wars and all that kind of stuff here, because I don't understand. So why don't we just get down on our knees and see people and understand them for who they are? Is it possible that you are on one side of the door and someone is on the other side, and if you just open that up a crack, we might just be able to learn about who that person is and how we can intertwine our story with their story? I stood up here a few weeks ago and we talked about the universe and how we're all going one way. If I go against this, if I am not seeing people for who they truly are, I am going against the fundamental physics nature of what the universe is doing. Because the universe is going one way. The universe is creating community. The universe is working together and it's growing in this beautiful, amazing thing that God's created. And if I don't see someone in the way that Jesus sees someone, then I'm going against the natural act of the universe. We need to be going in the same way. God said in Leviticus, don't turn away the stranger, because remember, you used to be the stranger. We're all strangers somewhere, and we all want to be known. Why do you think we've got gangs out there? They just want to feel connected to something bigger than themselves because their family or whatever, their schooling or whatever it was, didn't give it to them. And so gangs at its essence is a community where people find love, find support, and find belonging because they don't get that anywhere else. Why can't the church do that? It's not about here sitting and judging those young guys, those young girls who are ram raiding. Why are they doing it? What is it about? What's going on for them? Why aren't they getting what they need? They're the stranger. Don't turn away the stranger, because remember, you used to be the stranger. That's all I've got to say. So we're going to sing. I'm going to get the music team back up here. I'm going to go back behind my little cage. And I pray that something's you've understood that passage a little bit better and something's clicked. And just remember that how we treat people counts. What we do with our time here counts. And I'm not saying that to, as I said, to wag my finger. I'm saying it because we all want to be in the same step as the universe. We all want to be going in the same way. We want to be creating community. We all want to be creating a place where people belong. I mean, look at the second one you've got up there, home. You aren't a guest here. This is your home. Whether you've been here 2 minutes or 20 years, this is your place. This is your family. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and strangers. You've got that sitting up on the board. How good's that? But fellow citizens with God's people, and also members of this household. So you are no longer strangers here. So why do we sometimes not welcome strangers? Why is it sometimes we don't see? I'm going to stop talking now, and we're going to let the music team carry on. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want to hear more or join our community, feel free to come join us down at 532 Donbuck Road, Massey, opposite the community centre. Thank you and God bless.